you, everyone who's here today. We're really excited to hear from a few different people as part of the conversation today in this collaboration, and really looking at this as an evening that is an opportunity for networking and exploring the resources available as well. So encourage you again to think about if there is a connection you'd like to use or make. Feel free to use the chat, and then also know that all of us here at ASU are a resource for you as well. So if anyone is kind of an aspiring entrepreneur or curious what that even means, both Bailey and I would be happy to connect with you after the event, in addition to all the other things. So with that, we're going to shift our conversation, and I'm going to continue to play host. So Bailey will, in just a minute or two, spotlight our panelists for the evening. And I'm going to welcome Aubrey, Sarabi, and Travis to the conversation, who have been part of the event so far and now get to kind of serve as current panelists that are part of our Venture Devils program. So I know Robert had mentioned in his story being kind of applying multiple times, not necessarily successfully at first with the Edson Student Entrepreneur Initiative. And in what is great news, we actually now have more resources available with more support for students in our broader community at different stages in the process. And so now you don't directly apply to just one program that has a handful of seats. You hopefully apply for something like the Venture Devils program, which all of our panelists here today are a part of in some capacity. So with that, I'm going to ask everyone to tell us a little bit about who they are, what their venture is, and how it relates in some way to the field of health or science. And we'll use the same order for a little bit for the questions that are kind of going around. And I'm going to just say it based on what I see on the screen. So we're going to start with Aubrey, and then we'll go to Sarabi, and then we'll finish with Travis with answering each of these questions. And I really, again, encourage anyone on chat, if you'd like to ask your own question. I have a list of things prepared, but we're excited to be in the virtual room with you. So to start, just tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're working on, Aubrey.
Yeah, so my name is Aubrey Rhodes. I'm 5 years into my PhD in clinical psychology. So that means that I'm really a scientist by training. I'm also a therapist, and I teach research methods here on campus. For my venture, I am really interested in how do we get programs that we know help people out to the people who actually need them. I'm deeply troubled by the fact that we have so many evidence-based, really effective programs, but that so few individuals are able to actually access those. Our mental health care system in many ways is a nightmare, and traditional routes and institutions have not been effective. And so I sort of turned to entrepreneurship and an innovative method of disseminating an evidence-based program, specifically an audio intervention, or more colloquially, a podcast. And that's what I'm working on now.
Thank you, Aubrey. And then Sarabi, you're next.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, first of all, so much for having me here. It's so exciting to be a part of the event. My name is Aubrey, and I am originally from India. This is my first year graduate study at ASU. I'm majoring in management of technology and technical entrepreneurship. So I am the co-founder of this company called Quantinex, based in India. So we're building haptic feedback gloves for augmented and virtual reality. We are a peripheral device for augmented and virtual reality devices, which is headsets. So what our device actually does is it helps you interact with virtual objects in the virtual space. So we give haptic feedbacks like touching an object. We give tactile feedback for holding an object in the virtual space. We give temperature feedback where you can feel the temperature of the objects in the virtual space, as well as we're currently under research and development for olfactory feedback, which is fragrance inputs for the user. So I don't have a lot of managerial experience because I come from a computer science background, and ASU has been really helpful to me with every sort of resources. I've been taking, a lot of gains from whatever ASU has to offer to me. I've been participating in competitions and taking part in every event, and I've connected with so many great people. They're all so helpful. I'm really glad to be a part of ASU, as well as to be a part of this event as well.
Thank you. And then Travis, tell us a little bit about yourself and your venture.
Sure. So my name is Travis Ander, and I originally hail from the Midwest of the U.S. And came down to ASU in right around 2001, 2002. I had a long journey in my undergrad at ASU as an industrial designer, and then I moved on to a very fruitful and rewarding career designing products and leading advanced development sectors in the energy space. I received my first graduate degree from University of Denver in environmental policy management with a focus on energy and sustainability, and launched my second company from that. My first company is a design firm that I launched when I was an undergrad, and then the second company is a agricultural utility that was a commercialization of my graduate thesis. I moved out to Palo Alto shortly after my graduation and forming the company to try to raise money in venture capital, a very exciting and challenging opportunity there. And the pandemic hit, and I looked around me and I thought, I kind of want to get out of the most expensive part of the country that's in this volatile climate. So I looked at programs at ASU, and I'd originally selected a PhD program, but the application process was going to take me 18 months. And so in the meantime, I found a lovely one-year graduate program for MS of Innovation and Venture Development. I was part of the first cohort, and from that cohort came my third company, which is called Lemna, and that's what I work on very actively today. And Lemna is the fun term is phytoremediation. That is cleaning of wastewater using plants. And so what we do is we target the livestock industry and concentrated animal feeding operations. And we specifically look at how to reduce their nutrient density before it makes its way into groundwater and surface water environments, because that has been a root cause of human health concerns and downstream freshwater algae blooms. And so we developed a vertical farming technology that essentially grows an aquatic plant species in the manure lagoon water and cleans that water and provides data to the farmer, while also growing a high protein plant-based crop. So that's what we are working on very actively and full time.
It's so exciting to hear just a few examples of a variety of ideas that people are working on in different stages. So thank you all for sharing kind of that brief snippet overview. I know at ASU, and it's actually on my background, I did not plan it today, but quite a lot of times we really use this kind of hallmark idea or encouragement to say, just start, whatever your idea is. You should just start working on it. And I'd be really curious to hear what inspired you all to go from having an idea or something you wanted to have be better. So Robert talked a lot about the problem he personally experienced, and move forward and kind of saying, okay, I can be a founder, or I can be an entrepreneur, and I can do this and start whatever it is I'm working on. So again, Aubrey, if you don't mind sharing kind of what inspired you to go down this path.
Yeah, I'm really curious, like how many people here are, researchers and publish scientific papers. But that's really my background. And I think when I heard the statistic that only about 11% of published papers ever actually really sort of make it into the world and impact any sort of policy or way of functioning, and that even, among those that do, it takes about 10 years, I just felt a bit perhaps existential. And while I believe in the power of science and it's so important, I also recognize that the institutions that we've created in academia don't always serve the people that actually are the end users who deserve to be served. And as a result, while continuing to engage in science, I just really felt like there needed to be something that was more immediate and accessible, that sort of, gave the science that we've been doing back to the stakeholders. And that's really what that pushed me out the door.
Great, thank you for sharing. Abby?
So I think my first major motivation to get into entrepreneurship is my dad, because he's in the corporate life for a really long time, and I've seen him go through different phases of corporate life, which I never thought would, suit me, or I never thought I would want to be a part of. So that is one thing that really motivated me into, starting something of my own, and, building on my idea and building on my venture and following my dream. And once we actually started the whole Quantinex idea as a product that we took to a hackathon. It was just a mere project that time. We never intended it to be a company. We never thought it would become a company, and we never thought people would actually be interested in learning about it. And once I started going to these competitions and presenting it to the people there, presenting it to the judges there, they were really curious about knowing what is this and how is this going to work. And there were a lot of questions that popped up. And that's when I realized, there are so many different technologies which people are not aware of, or maybe people are aware of, but they don't have a chance to experience it because they don't have the resources or probably the chance to experience it. And that's exactly what pushed me to create Quantinex as a company from a project, because I really wanted people to experience augmented and virtual reality and offer something different, which would, make, at the end of the day, all of our lives easier. So, yeah.
Well, and what a story to have it be a project that then you realized could extend beyond it. So that's, and Travis, I don't know if you want to answer it for what made you start your first time or maybe your third time along the way. Whatever was useful for you. I know you have kind of an interesting experience of having done this more than once as well. So maybe it's how did you start, or maybe it's what keeps you going now, whichever question's most compelling to answer.
Yeah, I grew up in a family where when I think of who was around me, as a single parent family, my mom worked a lot. And so she would very often, send us off to aunts and uncles' houses to go stay. And both of my twin uncles were entrepreneurs themselves. One ran a consultancy for the military, and the other one owned a water lab testing company. And so that's kind of always been with me. And when I was in my undergrad, I developed this sense of altruism around designing products and the impact that we can have in designing tangible solutions to various problems around the space. And then I just kind of chose the comfortable. I created my first company to protect myself for contract work when I was in my undergrad, and it sat dormant while I went and had a corporate career. And after about 7 years working for one of the Fortune 100 companies, I looked back at, we had to do an annual study listing all the products we've developed, any patents that we had filed. And I looked back at my portfolio, and my products over that 7 years had garnered well over $1 billion in revenue. And I said to myself, I get $1 for each one of those patents that I filed. Why am I making someone else rich? And so in an environment where bureaucracy would stifle altruism on a regular basis. And so I thought to myself, I have the education and the experience to go out and make products that make a positive difference. And that's essentially when I jumped ship from my, I had a 6-figure career to essentially working on a startup full-time and teaching part-time at a university in Philadelphia. And so that was really kind of the leap that took me, was this idea that I could create something much bigger than the projects I was going to be handed in the corporate environment.
That's great. Thank you for sharing. It's interesting to see the points at which we are inspired. Aubrey, you're currently pursuing a doctoral degree in clinical psychology. I think you've mentioned that already, and you've talked a little bit about the fact that your podcast is a way to maybe attract a larger audience. Is that something that you felt confident you were going to create or do, or is it really a result of having gone through this process and realizing your research needed to have a bit more direct audience? How did that work for you?
Yeah, so I don't know how relevant of an answer this is, but for my doctoral degree, we all have to do something called a comprehensive exam, in which we sort of write a proposal for a large-scale research project and sort of write a grant proposal in order to do that. In the process of doing that, I proposed a grant proposal in order to do this podcast, in order to research its effects, and in order to examine the ways that this could be an effective method of dissemination of mental health programs. After doing so, it became quite clear that these sorts of innovative methods are not funded by traditional funding mechanisms such as the, National Institute on Drug Abuse or, National Institute of Health. And as a result, I had to sort of pivot and say, is there any way that I can figure out to make this happen? Just a little bit of money will give me so much capacity. And that's when I found Venture Devils and Entrepreneurship. And I've really just been so grateful that this sphere is willing to maybe fund ideas that the evidence base isn't there for yet to make, NIH want to fund it.
Yeah, that's exciting. We talk a lot about this idea of entrepreneurial mindset, and one of the key components is like being resourceful is so important. So really exciting that there was a place for that and an option that was an alternative pathway to get the support you needed to hopefully make more impact. So Robbie, you're a co-founder. So that means you're on a team, right? What advice would you give for someone who is interested in entrepreneurship and maybe looking to connect with another potential team member or co-founder?
Yeah. So I think entrepreneurship is not just about building on a venture, but it's also about connecting with people along the way. And having a co-founder on a company, I think, is one of the most important things for me, because I do not have a skill set in every background, and I'm well versed in one thing where and I lack in probably another thing which a co-founder might fit right into. And it basically, having a good co-founder will either make or break the company. And it's really about whom you're very comfortable working with whom you have the perfect synergy, and the trust plays a really strong game in finding a co-founder. And in my opinion, if you want to grow the company better and reach out to more people, get on board people with different skill sets, and bring a co-founder, because you will get the help, you will get the the trust that you can share with that person, and there's a lot of advantages that comes along with it. So it's a really exciting journey being in entrepreneurship, and sharing that with somebody who has the same interest as you and has the same goal for the company without expecting anything in return is a really nice thing. So I think having a co-founder, if you want to, is a really great step towards building a venture.
That's great. I know sometimes we have our examples of entrepreneurship maybe in pop culture or other environments. It's like one person against the world, when so often these opportunities are built by teams and benefit someone working on something with you that has a different or complementary skill set.
Right.
Travis, I'd be curious, what's an accomplishment that you're most proud of during your time at ASU?
Sure. There's kind of a toss up there, because I did something unexpected during my MSIVD program, and that was to volunteer for the U.S. Army's it's an accounting agency that essentially keeps track of missing in action and non-recoverable soldiers over previous conflicts. And that was very rewarding. It's something I never would have really expected. However, I think that the thing that we are most proud of is winning a grant through the MSIVD program in their pitch competition. It was awarded from the sponsor of the program at the time, which is essentially Align Technologies. We know them as Invisalign, as well as Poole Corey Law. And we won second place, and it was a $10,000 grant opportunity there. And that essentially gave us the resources needed to install our first laboratory trial out at the Arizona Center for Algae Technology at ASU Polytechnic. And we ran that trial for about 3 or 4 months this past fall, and that has led us on to other accelerators and other programs like that. So it was a very nice ability to kind of kick off the venture with a little bit of capital to back us, and enough capital to essentially build out those prototypes and those minimal viable products, and to do some of the biological testing on the manure water within our laboratory space. So
thank you for sharing, and I'm glad you had such positive experiences, that there's more than one thing, that it's not an easy question to answer. I had written these questions the other week and looked back at them and I was like, that is not, I don't know if I could have an answer for that if someone asked it of me. So I'm glad to hear you had two wonderful experiences that you can share with our audience today. So we have one more formal kind of prepared question, and then I'll encourage if anyone on the call does have something they'd like to ask, whether it's for the whole panel or someone in particular, please let us know. But I always like to ask this question, which is what is one piece of advice you would give to the students that are either here today in the room or might be watching this later? So the things you wish you knew earlier, or just the advice that or encouragement that you want to give, however that looks for you, starting again with Aubrey.
I think the advice that I would give is that people want to help so much more than I knew when I started this process. And especially that being a student, especially at ASU, is such an incredible time. We are so safe here, and our status as a student gives us almost an automatic in with so many different people. I have asked, I mean, honestly, dozens of people at this point for help. A lot have ghosted me, a lot have ignored me, but the ones who haven't, I have formed partnerships that mean that the product that I'm creating, I think, is going to be of significantly higher quality than ones that are similar that had millions of dollars in funding. And that's a result of really being willing to ask for help and utilizing cold emailing and the extent of the ASU sort of system in a way that felt pretty uncomfortable, but now is very rewarding.
Great. And then Sarabi.
I would say my advice to anybody who wants to, be an entrepreneur is just start, like you said, because if you think this might probably not be the right time for you to start a venture, you are definitely wrong. It's always a good time to, start with your idea. It doesn't matter where or how it will go, just start. And like Lauren mentioned, everybody at ASU is a resource. That's definitely true because I've experienced that. Anybody you reach out to is, will do their best to help us out in any way. And also another piece of advice I would probably give is take part in every event that ASU hosts in terms of entrepreneurship, like Venture Devils and even open pitch competitions, because it really, builds up confidence in you. It motivates you to see how many people are actually interested. And as well as you never know, you might actually stumble across so many people who might help you now or in the future. So that's definitely one thing that I wanted to mention.
That's great. And then Travis.
Sure. Well, I would say, as someone who started at ASU before Michael Crow, take advantage of this university's resources. I've been to a lot of universities around this country, and this is one of the most resource-enabled campuses I've ever seen. It is endless, the possibility of potential that you can find if you just reach out and find out what is accessible to you through the university system. I mean, you can chase down any curiosity that you might have, and you will find an abundance of information and resources at your disposal. So take advantage of the university while you're here and all of its resources that it has to offer, because I can tell you from experience, those don't always exist in other places, whether that's a corporate environment, a different university, or just out doing your own thing. So take advantage of everything you can while you're here.
Great. And then it does look like Dr. Christensen asked the question in the chat. So a lot of times as advisors, so Serena is an academic advisor here at ASU, visit with students who share that they are unsure what they want to do when they graduate, and they're unsure how to even get started on figuring out what to do more broadly. What suggestions do you have to those students, especially when they feel like they are, I think the quotes are important here, behind? And whoever would like to answer that, if somebody feels compelled to do so.
I only have one recommendation. That is, if you're a student, head over to the College of Design and take Dr. Will Haywood's Finding Purpose class, because it will solve that problem in one way or another. You will definitely figure out a path and direction, whether that's right for you now or not. But it definitely gives you a sense of not feeling behind anymore. It enables you to try to kind of take control of your own destiny. So.
I'm noticing that what is coming up for me is much more me wearing a therapist hat as opposed to an entrepreneurship hat. But in this moment, there are some aspects of entrepreneur culture that are incredible. There are also some aspects of entrepreneur culture that I think can perpetuate some negative ideas. One of those ideas is, in my opinion, which again, just an opinion, but is the idea that there is a like one right path, or that there's one right thing, or that finding the work that you are passionate about is the ultimate pursuit. I tend to encourage individuals to view themselves as full-scale humans. And instead of starting with what it is that they want to do with their work, start with what it is they want to do with their life and work backwards from there. I recognize that this is a career-focused panel, but all of us here are human. And I think probably this specific existential crisis is something that many of us are dealing with, in large part because of the cultural messages we receive about the what is valuable about us as people. And I just want to separate out that I don't think what makes us valuable is necessarily the work we do, while the work we do obviously can have great value. Sorry if that is controversial.
Oh, I think I saw 2 heart responses or reactions in the audience. So definitely, absolutely appreciate that message. Surabhi, is there anything you'd like to add to this conversation?
Yes, find a mentor. I think from my experience, finding a mentor has really helped me clear out, a lot of confusion and doubts about my idea. They've a mentor at ASU, Suzanne Zentner. She's in the management technology department. So she's really helped me navigate and, clarify as well as like improvise my idea. She's there at every event that I participate in. She's always there for support or any kind of help at any time of the day. So I think that is one constant support that you would need if as an entrepreneur, as well as if not a mentor, then probably friends who are interested, or just immediate close relatives or even friends. But you do need the constant support behind you for the journey that you want to take. That is what I wanted to mention.
Thank you all so much for sharing with us and connecting with us today. Sharing a little bit about who you are, what got you here, what you're working on, but also this advice. I think it's always important to get the benefit of the community that we have, and that includes in events like these. So thank you just so much for sharing your perspectives. Aubrey, Surabhi, Travis, we really appreciate you, as well as Robert, for sharing your time and talents and stories with us today. So thank you again. We're going to really quickly talk about a resource or two that were mentioned, but just really appreciate everyone that spent their evening with us and their connection point today. If anyone does have anything they would like to share additional in the chat, feel free to do so. We'll keep that open for everyone. But otherwise, we'll stop the Spotlight panel recording. Thank you again for being here. And we'll share the recording with you all after the fact so that you can watch it back if you want to. But otherwise, I just really wanted to quickly highlight one particular program here at ASU that has been mentioned a few times in a few different ways, and that is the Venture Devils program. And so with that, there are opportunities throughout the school year. If there is something that you have as an idea, Surabhi, I think you were the champion for this program with things like find your mentor, know that you're not alone, do all these things. But you are all current participants in this program, which gives access to mentorship, opportunity to use collaborative workspace, And then also really take advantage of a variety of resources, which can include funding competitions if there is something you're working on that you want to compete for funding to move your idea forward. And with that, venturedevils.asu.edu is where you can go to find out more information. But we have so many other resources here at ASU in support of students and entrepreneurship. So really just encourage you to learn more about how you might get involved by visiting entrepreneurship.asu.edu, which, if you can believe it, is our website. And then our colleague Bailey is putting in a few other great kind of links on the chat, but I think that's it for Edson and I. So I don't know if Ivy or Dr. Christensen have anything else they'd like to add for wrapping up today's event, but just thank you again so much for being here today.
Yeah, I echo the sentiments, and this advice is wonderful. I think a lot of times in the sciences, students feel this immediate pressure to perform of how can they get into a lab, how can they do an internship, how can they publish, and do all of these things to prove their value. And what Aubrey said, I think, it struck a chord in my heart of it's okay to just be a human and to follow that passion, and whatever that is, how do you want to live your life, and having those morals and those ethics. So for anyone who's watching, please feel free to visit with your advisor on courses you can take and programs and opportunities to expand what you can do. You're not alone, and it's okay to deviate from the norm. So Ivy, was there anything you wanted to add?
No, I think you just wrapped that up beautifully, Serena. Aubrey, I wanted to thank you for informing students that you have to call. You just have to reach out. I tell students, I used to manage the research program before I moved into the internship area, and the constant question was, how do I get a research position? How do I do that? How do I connect? So it's and you just illustrated the process beautifully.
Thanks. Yeah, I have so many undergrads who work for me research-wise, and they all are like, how do I send an email to a person? And I always try to promise them, it's the greatest feeling when somebody emails you asking for your help. So I totally agree.
Yeah. Oh, and Travis, I've already got that Finding Purpose class on my list for recommendations. It's GRA 440 if anyone's interested, for the fall 22.
I was just going to mention Dr. Will Haywood. Haywood is a treasure, and try to catch him before he retires, because he is an amazing, I believe he's a psychotherapist, psychologist. He's an amazing resource on this campus university, and he's been here dedicated for so long. Just try to get there sooner than later.
Thank you.
Great. Well, with that, I think we're gonna stop recording. But thank you everyone for being here, spending your time with us today, and we hope you have a great rest of your week.